Alright, guys, well, it finally happened. After God knows how long of speculation and rumors and leaks and a few tidbits of actual info here and there, Nintendo has finally fully revealed the successor to the Nintendo Switch. Which kind of came out of nowhere, honestly. They just sort of casually dropped a trailer today without much pomp or circumstance. But they have fully revealed the Nintendo Switch 2, which is officially going to be the name for this thing. So, for the first time ever, Nintendo is just sticking a number at the end of their console name. So, going with a more simple naming scheme this time, probably trying to avoid the confusion of the whole Wii U situation again. But we did finally get our first look at this thing, which this trailer they showed today was a little over 2 minutes long, and it didn't give us a ton of hard info about this thing. It kind of just showed the original Switch model, like digivolving into the Switch 2. But we did get a very good look at the console itself, which overall I thought it looked pretty good. I thought it looked nice. It had a more, I guess, sleek design would be the best way to put it. Overall, it is larger than the original Switch. So the screen is bigger, the console itself is bigger, and the Joy-Cons are a tad bit bigger to match, of course. Which the Joy-Cons received a lot of focus in this trailer. It seems they have quite a few new differences from the originals. Which the biggest difference is that they now just sort of snap on to the sides of the console, as opposed to sliding in from the top with the little rail system like the originals had. So that was heavily emphasized in this trailer. The new connection ports for these is obviously very different. Now, I can't really tell if that's an improvement or not until I'm able to actually get my hands on one of these things and feel how strong of a connection that is. I mean, it looked fine in the trailer, obviously, but I never really had any problem with the rail system on the originals. So we'll have to see how this new system is. But beyond that, the other big difference with the Joy-Cons is that they have much more subtle color schemes this time now. Instead of the entire Joy-Con itself being whatever color, now most of the Joy-Con itself is just black, and instead it has little accent colors around the control sticks and on the little connector parts, sort of on the inside where it connects to the console. So definitely more of a subdued sort of aesthetic to this console. The other big changes that jumped out to me was the sort of like inner shoulder buttons for, the mode where you're doing two player with each player having just one Joy-Con. Those sort of inside shoulder buttons for that mode were made much larger. So combining that with the fact that the Joy-Cons themselves are a little bit bigger, it looks like playing in that mode will be a lot more comfortable than on the original Switch, even without having to use the little, wrist strap attachment piece. So that does seem like a nice improvement. And then, of course, the other big thing is that there is a new button on the right Joy-Con down beneath the home button. There's this little square button. And I have no idea what this thing does. The leaks might have addressed that. I know that there were some more recent leaks that seem to pretty accurately match what we ended up seeing in this trailer. So I haven't kept up with any of the leaks personally. I sort of tuned out, Nintendo hardware rumors and stuff way back on the day the original Switch came out, and we started immediately getting rumors about a Switch Pro. So I haven't kept up with any of that personally myself in a long time. I just can't bring myself to give a shit until we get any actual info. So some of those leaks or something might have addressed what this button does, but as for me, I personally have no clue what this button is there for, but it did jump out to me. So the only other thing on the console itself that I sort of had a more negative reaction to, I guess at first, is that they did show the stand for this thing, and the stand is more skinny, I guess, compared to the stand on the OLED version, which that's the version of the Switch that I have, which on the OLED model, like basically the entire lower half of the back just sort of folds out to be the stand. While on the Switch 2, it's just like a little skinny rail piece that folds out. So, I mean, it looks better than the stand on the original model Switch, at least. But compared to the OLED model, this, at least at first glance, seems like a downgrade to me. Again, it's one of those things that you really kind of have to get your hands on it to be able to tell for sure. But when I first saw that, my sort of gut reaction was that, that seemed like a downgrade over the OLED stand. So that's pretty much all the info we have on the console itself. We didn't get any sort of specifics. They didn't mention any specs or anything like that at all. Again, I'm sure some of the leaks have addressed these sort of things. I haven't kept up with those. So I don't really care about the specs all that much, really. I've heard some people talk about how apparently it's supposed to be roughly on par with like the power of the original model PS4, which sounds fine to me. I don't really give a shit about my graphics or anything like that too much. I mainly just want there to be good games on the thing. Which, speaking of games, they showed butt fuck nothing. So, we have no idea what games are going to be on this. They didn't talk about the launch lineup or anything. The only thing we did get was near the end, we did get a few seconds worth of footage of what appears to be a new entry in the Mario Kart series. So it looks like they're finally going to stop milking Mario Kart 8 and give us a brand new Mario Kart game. Which, obviously, is something I think is pretty expected for a new console generation from Nintendo. So we don't have any confirmed Switch 2 titles yet. It wouldn't surprise me if some of the bigger named games that they've already announced and haven't talked about in a while, things like Metroid Prime 4 or Pokemon Legends ZA, maybe some of those will end up getting ported to Switch 2 and maybe release cross-gen or whatever. So I could definitely see that happening. But they did not confirm, because we already knew this. They reiterated that this Switch 2 is going to be fully backwards compatible with the original Nintendo Switch games. So even if those big already announced titles don't get a native Switch 2 version, you will be able to play the original Switch versions on the Switch 2. And they did mention that there are a few exceptions to this that won't be backwards compatible on Switch 2. Which they didn't say what that was. The first thing that came to mind to me was things that are more specific, like that, Nintendo Labo cardboard bullshit, or maybe Ring Fit Adventure or whatever the fuck, since these new Joy-Cons are larger than the old ones. Just size-wise, they may not be compatible with some of the things that are needed for those. So that's probably all they're referring to there. I think generally 99.9% of Switch games will totally work on this just fine. But yeah, that is pretty much all they've told us about this thing so far. Like I said, we did get no specifics on any specs. They didn't give us an exact release date either, beyond just 2025, which again we already knew. They also gave no mention of a price point or anything like that. So I don't really have a ton to say about this until we get some more info, other than, it generally looked nice. I definitely wish that Nintendo would, walk back the censorship bullshit that they've been doing lately for this thing. That would be very nice, though I don't expect that to happen. And of course, I would always hope that, unlike the Switch 1, that we could get a Pokemon game on this thing that isn't the dribbling fucking shits. But, I definitely have no hope of that happening. So, yeah, overall, it looked fine. That's really all I've got to say about it. They did mention that they are going to do a Nintendo Direct focused on the Switch 2 on April the 2nd. So we should get answers to a lot of these questions then. But until then, we don't really have a whole lot to go on. So hopefully during that Direct they do start showing some of the launch titles for this thing, since ultimately the games on it are the most important thing of all. So I would like to start seeing some of them. And the other big thing I definitely want to see is the price point, because that's one of the things I've been very curious about, to see how bad that ends up being. But yeah, I'll cover that direct once it happens in April, which is quite a ways off from now. So anyway, I guess that's all I got to say. So lots of luck to you and yours.